Hello, Lee. Welcome to the show. We're going to talk emotions, and specifically today, we're going to talk dementia. So, dementia is a really big problem these days. It's approximately, as far as I know, 50 million people worldwide have dementia. And they say that about 10 million people are diagnosed each year. And that by 2050, there's going to be about 135 million people in the world who have dementia. Now, if we compare that to something that we're already really familiar with, that would be cancer. And if you compare that, 17 million people were diagnosed with cancer in 2018, and we're adding 10 million people with dementia every year, comparing 135 million people with dementia by 2050 and 27.5 million people with cancer at about the same time. That's a bit of a discrepancy, and yet we're placing so much more emphasis on cancer these days, don't we?
Well, yes, because that's where most of the research has been done. And cancer has had some big wins, whereas dementia has had some big losses.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so dementia affects 1 in 5 families at the moment, but they say that it's in 20 years, it's going to be up to 1 in 2 families.
That's correct.
And this is something that this is a syndrome that makes no difference between developed countries, undeveloped, underdeveloped countries, between, any kind of strata, basically. It just could affect anybody.
That's right.
So what is dementia?
So dementia is an umbrella term, and it covers 120 different conditions and counting.
Wow.
Alzheimer's is the prevalent form of dementia, and that accounts for about 70% of dementia cases. But then you have Lewy body, vascular, frontal temporal, alcohol-related dementia, Parkinson's-related dementia, MS-related dementia. And in order to have dementia, at least 2 parts of your brain are dying.
Right.
So dementia is actually a collection of symptoms. It's a syndrome.
Okay, so it's as you said, an umbrella term like cancer.
That's correct.
Okay, with different symptoms and all of that, but the outcome is inevitable.
That's right, and unfortunately, it can't be stopped. It is progressive, and it will eventually end in death.
Okay. So what are the symptoms? I mean, you said that 2/3 of the brain are dead, but how do we know? And I know you said it's an umbrella term, so therefore the symptoms can be completely different depending on the person. But I mean, we all have heard of people who, as they say, they lose their marbles.
Well, dementia can affect your memory. It can affect your speech, your balance, your vision. So it depends on what type of dementia you have. Vascular dementia, for example, some of the symptoms are numerous small strokes. So vascular dementia, obviously the blood isn't flowing correctly to the brain.
Mm. Okay. And so can you diagnose dementia early? Because I mean, obviously when you've really got all the symptoms there, when you've got the strokes and when you've got sometimes I understand the hallucinations or people really don't know where they are anymore, but is there any way to diagnose an early onset?
Well, interestingly enough, very recently, they've come up with a genetic test that they can do to see if you're predisposed to dementia or Alzheimer's. I'm not quite sure if it's just Alzheimer's or if it's any dementia.
Okay.
So that's in the works. Early onset dementia, there's no way of telling that I know of whether or not you're predisposed to that. But I could be wrong.
Okay.
There are several types of dementia that are hereditary. But once again, that's genetically based.
Right. So we know about epigenetics and how, the environment can actually impact on our genes. So is there anything like that we can do? Because a lot of times we talk about nutrition and exercise and all of that. So there's a lot of stuff that we can do, but we don't really know what the causes of dementia are, do we? Other than supposedly the hereditary stuff. But we are exposed to so many more things these days. I mean, was dementia always a problem in history? Because I don't remember
Yes.
hearing about that.
Yes.
Really?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yes. The only reason why we're seeing so much more of it today is because we're living so much longer.
Right.
So they figured out a way of keeping us alive a lot longer than we used to be
Okay.
alive.
So
So that,
it's a baby boomer problem then.
yeah, if you want to.
Okay.
Although it has been around for a very long time. You
Okay.
know, when I remember growing up in my little village in France, and there were several oldies walking around who didn't really know where they were, who they were, or whatever. They were perfectly happy and perfectly safe because everybody took care of them. But that was dementia.
Yeah.
But it was just an accepted
Okay.
part of life.
But these days, dementia is treated as a very negative experience, right? I mean, it's like it's almost like a specter that's hanging over us. Eventually, we will get dementia if we look at the figures. So you told me that when you first started dealing with, and when you became a dementia consultant, you were experiencing fear and frustration and anger and sadness at how people were being treated,
That's
um, and,
correct.
and that you now experience very different emotions. You're experiencing joy and satisfaction and compassion. And so what brought that change about? Because the people you're dealing with are still the same, right?
That's correct. But when you're empowered with the knowledge of how to enter their world, because they're in their own special world, when you can enter that world with them and just let yourself be vulnerable and let yourself go, it can actually be a pretty pleasant experience. Plus that you're accompanying them on their path, and they enjoy the company.
Right.
The person who inspired me the most was Teepa Snow, who is an American trainer who's been working with people with dementia for over 40 years now. And she is one of the most compassionate, caring, funny, loving people I've ever met. And she imparts this attitude to the people that she trains so that they can then go out and work with families or staff in residential nursing facilities or hospitals, wherever there are people with dementia, and help the carers to communicate better with the people who have dementia, and help the people with dementia just enjoy their lives more.
Because it's hard. I mean, it's really I found it interesting when I took a look at the statistics that 2/3 of dementia patients are actually women, and that most of the carers are women.
That's
So
true.
the question I've got, because this is a show all about emotion, is this now I understand men get dementia as well, but if women are the patients and they are the carers, do we need to educate people in a different way to be able to deal with dementia patients or with?
We absolutely do. It is dealing with someone with dementia is completely different than dealing with someone who is aging normally,
Mm, okay.
because they really are in a completely different world. They could be, for example, stuck in a point in time where they're 7 years old and living in their childhood home. So when they see their husband, they don't see him as their husband. They may see him as their big brother or their little brother or their father, or, a complete stranger.
And you can find out where they live, because I remember you telling me a story about this woman who was hallucinating and she was asking her son to take her home.
That's correct. He visits her on a regular basis, and she kept on complaining about the fact that she wanted to go home. And so he decided that he would surprise her one day and bring her to the home where he had grown up for the day, take her up there for lunch.
Yeah.
And he did, and she got there and she said, "This isn't my home. I don't live here." Well, that was because she was stuck in a period of time when she lived in Brisbane with her father when she was a little girl. She was about 11 or 12. And so her son, when he took her to the house and was trying to explain to her, "But yes, this is where I grew up," she looked at him and said, I don't care where you grew up. This is where I grew up. So that really gives you a clear idea of how they are in their own little world.
And you can find that out by talking to them, right?
And yes, and it really helps if they're living in a residential care facility. It really helps when they first move in to question their families, especially if their dementia is advanced, to question their families thoroughly about their past lives, because that's going to help you deal with them on a much more effective level, so that at any given time you can, when they say something, it'll click and you'll remember reading in their records or hearing from their family that, yes, they used to be a doctor, so that's why they're saying such and such, or they grew up next to a billabong and went swimming every day, or whatever.
Yeah. So there are three groups of people who really need to learn to deal with their emotions. There's the person living with dementia.
No, they do not have to learn to deal with their emotions.
Well, okay, but
because they can't.
Okay, thank you. Good point.
Yep. No, they're just the way it is, and there's nothing you can do to change it. And you can tell them 50,000 times, I just told you that, and they're not going to remember it. That's gone. Absolutely gone.
Okay, so there's no emotional control, any kind of emotional management whatsoever. It's just completely unfiltered.
That's correct.
Okay, so the person who really needs, or the people who really need to learn deal with their emotions are the carers and the family members, and those, or anybody who is around the people who live with dementia.
That's right. Yep.
Okay, and what does a carer? What is a carer? I mean, you said that history is really important. So if they're with a family, it's really important to keep in mind where they're coming from, what their background is, maybe even remember what they're like, because I understand that often what happens is that people are really placid and really calm in most of their adult life. When they have dementia, all of a sudden become really angry. And that people...
Or the opposite can happen.
Right.
A very angry, aggressive, mean person can all of a sudden, when they begin to have dementia, become a very calm, placid, charming, delightful human being. But the ones who are angry and aggressive, there's a reason behind that. And if you're well trained, you can learn to, it's a mystery. It's a mystery that you have to solve. Every behavior has a meaning to it. Mm. If the person has an aggressive behavior, there's a reason for it. It could be pain, it could be discomfort, it could be not liking their environment, the noise, there's too much noise, it's too hot, they don't like the smells. There are a whole bunch of different things. So you have to take out your toolkit and solve the mystery by asking the right questions, or if they're not able to communicate with speech, there's a lot of body language that happens.
Okay, so that's the toolkit. Communicate,
words,
exactly. Body language, and attention management, which is a really important emotional intelligence competence, by the way. Because when we know how to manage our attention and don't get overwhelmed, then we can cope with challenges much more effectively. So do you think would be useful for people? Because if dementia is going to be such a problem, I mean, it already is, but it's going to become an even bigger problem. So it sounds to me like emotional intelligence training would be a really useful thing for people to do in any case.
Without a doubt. Without a doubt.
Because if I can also imagine that if somebody is just being diagnosed with dementia and then the early stages, it could help them actually deal with I would imagine that if I were to be diagnosed with dementia, I would probably struggle with that.
Yes.
And I would probably go, what do I do now? But if there's nothing I can do about it, if the progression is inevitable, then I can maybe there's something I can do to, I don't know, train my dying brain to deal with my emotions. I don't know.
Who knows, Angela? The brain is an absolutely amazing organ. It really is. And now that I think about it, now that I look at it from that perspective, who knows? it's amazing to see how people, even with advanced dementia, can work out certain things when that part of their brain is dead. It's like they use another part of the brain to compensate. You've heard the stories about the people who, I don't know, have a bullet going through part of their brain and they're supposedly lost their speech. But through therapy and through, working at it, another part of the brain takes over. I'm not sure if it's exactly for speech, but for other things that makes up for the loss in one part of the brain with another part of the brain.
Neuroplasticity.
Exactly. So well, I guess another example I can give is when a person with dementia has lost their sense of speech. They found that when they listen to music, because the music is on the right side of the brain. There's music, rhythm, poetry, prayer. It's all on the right side of the brain.
Yeah.
And that stays until the very end. And they found that people who are semi-comatose, sitting in their wheelchairs during the day, not doing anything, when you put earphones on them with music that they used to love, they'll wake up.
Yeah.
Some of them will even start singing. They can actually sing the words, whereas they're incapable of having a conversation.
Yeah.
And then when you take the earphones off, even for a while afterwards, they're able to communicate verbally, which is mind-boggling. Yeah. And that shows that the brain is working in mysterious ways to make up.
Yeah. So music and dancing, any kind of activity like that is actually really good for dementia patients, but it's also
anything rhythmic. So when people with dementia have lost their sense, their ability to speak, or even their ability to comprehend speech, and that's all in the left side of the brain, and it's one of the first things to go in several types of dementia. So you have vocabulary, speech comprehension, and speech production that go. So when I'm talking to you and you have dementia, you may not necessarily understand the words that are coming out of my mouth. But if I communicate with you effectively enough via body language, then you'll get it. And my tone of voice and the rhythm. Rhythm is very, very important.
Okay.
Then they can figure out what it is you're trying to communicate.
Okay, so again, that's where song comes in, dancing comes in. But if I speak in a certain rhythm, so I can, if I read a poem or anything like that, if I use that kind of rhythm, or
I'm talking in order to communicate with you. You need to take a shower now, and this is how I'm going to communicate this to you. It's you can do so by mimicking shower. You also have to pay attention to where you're standing in front of the person with dementia. You don't want to stand straight in front of them because they want to be able to get out. They want to be able to, they don't want you blocking them. So it's always a good idea to stand to the side. And when you're greeting a person with dementia, there are certain protocols that you need to follow in order to make an effective contact with them.
Right.
And Teepa Snow teaches you these. There's ways to hold their hand. There's ways to shake their hands. There's ways to feed them. There are all sorts of things that you can do to facilitate communication and get done what needs to be done.
Okay, so there's a lot of things that can be done for the person living with dementia. I think that's the official term, right?
Absolutely, yes. Person living with dementia.
Yes. So a person living with dementia can get a lot of care, and we can learn to do that. But my impression is also that there are a lot of carers out there who get really overwhelmed and really stressed out by taking care of people with dementia.
And that's only because they're not trained to take care of people with dementia. They're trained to take care of people who are aging normally. And even that's pretty stressful because in most facilities, you have way too few staff caring for too many residents.
Yes.
So the quality of care is not as high as it should be. And with dementia, that quality of care, that training has to be very specific.
Yeah. So what about families? If the person living with dementia is still at home, and as I said, as I mentioned before, most of the people who are taking care of them are the women. So and I know that the expression.
Actually, there are a lot of husbands taking care of their wives as well.
Yeah, so they're indirectly taking care of the wives who are then taking care of the person with dementia. Yes, no? I'm just
No,
curious.
no, I'm just thinking I can name 3 people right now that I know who are at home taking care of their wives with dementia.
Okay. All right, so that's great news because
And they do so up until they can't anymore, up until their wife has to go into a facility because the care is just too demanding. Either they're both very elderly and the husband doesn't have the strength to pick her up and do what he needs to do anymore, or he's just exhausted because it's a 24-hour a day job, and if he's not well trained, it's even more exhausting.
yeah, so
Um,
compassion
so
compassion burnout is an issue, right?
well, yeah. So once the person is in a good facility, then the time that they spend together can be really quality time, even if it's just 10, 15 minutes a day.
Mm.
He can put all of his energy into making sure that that time is really, really special, even if she doesn't remember who he is.
Mm.
He can be trained to get into her world and just have a really good time for 10, 15 minutes. And that'll really pep her up for the rest of the day.
I'm going to say something really controversial here because I do a lot of work with men who find it sometimes hard to get into their emotions and or express them in a constructive way. So showing empathy or showing compassion. So is this a way for men? And I know this is very controversial. This is a way for men to really get in touch with their emotions and express them to other people because it's not about them anymore. It's not about protection. It's about being vulnerable with somebody who doesn't have the ability to manage themselves anymore.
That's correct. Absolutely. And it's all about getting rid of the ego, for one, and allowing yourself to be vulnerable and realizing that this is not about you, it's about them. But it's about you when it comes to self-care.
Yes.
Because if you don't take really good care of yourself, you're not going to be worthwhile at all.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just forget it. It's not worth it.
And a lot of people think that by just managing the other person, it's like, it's what they say in planes. You need to put the oxygen mask on yourself
That's right.
first before you help other people. I don't have a lot of people in my life who have dementia, thankfully. But the people I have experienced and the people around them are really burning out because they are just always there for the person living with dementia. And so self-care comes last.
It's very important for the carer to, as soon as the person, their family member is, and they know they're going to be the carer, is diagnosed with dementia, they need to get on top of things right away. They need to figure out what their support network is going to look like in the present and all the way down the line. How are they going to deal with this, on a physical level as well? Are they going to have to change furniture around in the room? Are they going to have to move to a one-level home? How long from now? Are they going to need help? Are they going to need a carer to come in? What are the resources available to them? In Australia, it would be through My Aged Care to have that assessment done to see if they can get help with transportation, if they can get help with house cleaning or meals on wheels, etc. What it is they need and what it is they qualify for, and talk about how they're going to allot their finances for future care. And start looking into facilities for down the line, depending on what type of dementia they have. It can go anywhere from 4 to 20 years. Some people with Alzheimer's have survived for 20 years. That's a long time. And it's a progressive downward slope. It doesn't get any better. It just gets worse. So you really need to be able to figure out how you're going to deal with it from day one and get the training you need to deal with it one step at a time. And that's why TIPA Snow's program, Positive Approach to Care, is so useful. They've got family packs that they send out to you. That there's a book, there's some cards and there are different tools that you can use along the way, so that one step at a time you can get to know what to do and what not to do as you go.
Does it also include information about how to teach people how to be comfortable with uncomfortable emotions? Because I can imagine that dealing with somebody who has dementia brings up a lot of grief, a lot of shame, a lot of guilt, a lot of all of these emotions
Yes.
that we don't really learn how to deal with very,
Yes.
very effectively.
No, you're right, and it's difficult. She actually has a video that will teach you what you can do when you go and visit somebody in a nursing home who has dementia. If you don't know what to say to them or how to act with them, and you're really embarrassed because they're saying stupid things or that you think are stupid, or they're not making any sense, or they're angry or whatever, she's got a whole bunch of suggestions on what you can do, even if it's just a short visit, to make that visit really worthwhile for both of you. And that, once again, is entering into their world,
yeah,
and enjoying yourself while you're there.
And so these materials are widely available, or?
Well, teepasnow.com.
Okay, all right.
We'll TEEPA, snow, as in white winter stuff, .com.
Okay, we'll put the details we'll put the details in the link below.
Okay, good, great. Oh, she's got wonderful resources and lots of videos right on her homepage that you can look at that are a good help.
And then, of course, we also have people like you who are trained to be a dementia consultant. So are there enough people around to actually make sure that we care for people living with dementia?
No, we need a lot more. We need a lot more. As a matter of fact, there is no certificate really for dementia carer in Australia. We have a Cert 3 in individual care. Those are most people that you see working in nursing homes. And there's one very short module on dementia, which is helpful to a certain extent, but not anywhere near the amount of information you need to be effective with someone who has dementia. Dementia Australia does offer online courses as well, and so does the University of Tasmania, but there is no accreditation specifically for dementia, I don't think, at this point. I think there is one in Western Australia through TAFE that you can get some kind of accreditation for dementia care, but I'm not sure about that.
Okay. Are there I know that in other countries they're ahead. Like I know in Holland, for example, they've built whole communities where people with dementia, living with dementia, can walk around freely and move around and without the risk of getting lost, which is what happens here. It's like people just wander off and it's hard to find them again. So this is basically communities that are like you described when you described your life in France, when it was safe for people to walk around.
That's right.
And then it became really unsafe. So now we're creating dementia safe communities again.
That's right. And there's a village being built north of Hobart in Glenorchy, a dementia village that should be finished. It's being built right now as we speak. And they're working with the Wicking Institute, which is one of the world's foremost research institutes on dementia. And it's being built by a nursing home organization whose name I can't remember at the moment. But if you Google Dementia Village Hobart, you'll come up with the information. And that will be very interesting to see how they train people who work there.
So which countries, who do you know anybody who has an approach to dementia where you go, you know what, I feel if anything were to happen to me, this is where I'm going to move because I'm really going to be in good hands no matter what happens?
Well, I would go anywhere where the staff has been trained by Teepa Snow. Okay.
All right. Well, she can be anywhere in the world. What can we?
And she is. She's training people in England, and in Australia. She just came to Australia a couple of weeks ago to do a few workshops. One in Hobart, Melbourne, Sydney, Adelaide, and she's hoping to establish a more solid training presence here in the near future, which I would very much like to get involved in. But I'd say any facility, and she does list all the facilities in the U.S. that are TIPA SNO positive approach to care facilities. So if you want to put someone with dementia in a facility, I'd go to TIPA SNO's website and look for the list of facilities in whatever state it is you live in.
Okay. So we need to really learn to deal with emotions, obviously, to make sure that we are okay and manage the people who live with dementia in a compassionate, but also in a self-caring way that works for us. We also need to be able to make sure that we lead a life that may not stop us from having dementia, but I'm sure there's certain factors that stop us, or not stop us, but that can minimize the risk. Have they identified those yet?
Absolutely. Exercise, diet, attitude, meditation.
Attitude, how?
Your attitude, your positive attitude.
Right.
Meditation, mindfulness.
So all of the things that you are practicing. Yes.
And also being in nature, I would say is positive for anything.
Yeah.
Spending time in nature.
You'll be pleased to hear that I've got an interview lined up for that.
Excellent.
We're going to explore the impact of emotions on nature and nature's impact on us. So I think that's a really, really important topic as well.
Well, they're prescribing nature outings, and doctors are prescribing nature outings in the United States now. They're writing prescriptions for nature outings.
Yes.
Which actually makes perfect sense.
It does to me as well.
It really does.
Yeah. So it also sounds to me like dementia is potentially really big business.
Oh, there's no doubt about that.
So we don't have,
and it's a way of finding the happy medium between making money and providing excellent care. I'm not going to say adequate care, because I don't believe in adequate care for anything. I believe that as people age, they deserve the best care available. And I don't think it would cost that much more money to make sure that someone is well trained than not training them, because in the long run, it's going to be worthwhile.
Yeah.
So you're looking at long-term investments.
Yeah. So we need to look at training for the carers, training for family members, training for people. Again, this is the emotional and intelligence training to help people prepare for possibly getting dementia. I think it's a really useful thing to say, what am I going to do to minimize the risk of having dementia? Yeah. Now, I know you and I both speak several languages. So
that's right.
That in itself is already helping us to be dementia proof.
Yes, fascinating, isn't it?
Yeah, because I know that I know that when I start speaking a different language, it's almost like my brain switches gears.
Yeah.
And I think that kind of flexibility is probably a good thing.
That's right. And yeah, keeping your brain active, crossword puzzles, reading, challenging yourself, doing something new every day. Getting out of your comfort zone. Why not?
Well, and that's a really hard thing to do.
It is.
We've talked about that a lot. I mean, I still remember how we got into things really deep and meaningfully when we met when we were whale watching.
That's right. As you do.
Yes, as you do. And we talked about how we had stretched ourselves into different areas, and how being comfortable, being uncomfortable is really something that's important to both of us.
Yeah.
And and how challenging that can be at times, but we also know that it's good for us to do that.
Yeah, and it's all about learning how to manage those stress levels.
Yeah.
Here I am, 61 years old, still trying to figure out how to manage those darn stress levels.
Well, the good thing is this: if I can just refer to myself as this, I can feel the stress, but I can also let it go much faster these days. Instead of hanging in there for the next. If something upsets me, I don't have to hang in there for the next 3 months.
That's true.
So is it really worth it, and let it go? And that in itself should be a really good thing for the brain.
Yeah.
So we need to really talk to the powers that be about what we can do, because obviously there's a flow-on effect. I mean, if we're helping people to not only prove themselves against dementia, so as much as we can, obviously, because we are getting older and the brain is not really made for that age. What is it called? The brain is not really made for that age, for the length of
age, period, for old age.
Yes, for the length of life that we live, you know.
Yeah.
But it's also, again, the impact it has on people around people with dementia. You know, it's like, again, teaching people how to deal with that. And the problem is we're living in a world where emotions are less and less respected. We push emotions down more and more. And so anger, frustration, all of that, we look at the people and we go, you should be able to deal with that. So why are you getting so upset? And at the same time, people do get upset.
Yeah.
And we know that stress has an impact on the immune system. So again, by teaching people to deal with people living with dementia, how to deal with them, we probably help them not to get dementia, quite possibly. I'm hypothesizing.
Well, it can't hurt.
I mean, I'm all in favor of emotional intelligence trainings and teaching people how to be compassionate with people who have challenges. So we're going to prove ourselves by mastering our mind. And I know that you're studying Buddhism for that. And I'm wondering if that is actually how that is actually going to impact, because I know that there are a lot of Buddhist monks who volunteer their services for science. And I have not come across any study yet, but I would love to know if there's what the rate of dementia amongst Buddhist monks is.
Oh, wow. That's an interesting question. That's a very interesting question.
Because these people learn to manage their mind.
That's right. And we know that there have been studies done, quite a few scientific studies done with some of the Dalai Lama's monks on the effect of meditation on the brain, the physical effect of meditation on the brain.
Yes.
And it's very positive. So you might have an excellent point there, and it might really be worthwhile to do some research on that.
Will be good. In any case, it'll be good to start meditating, because it's not just something that would possibly help with dementia, but it has so many benefits in every other area of life.
It's completely changed my life. There's no doubt about that.
Yes. So yes, so let's on that note, I would say that we're pretty clear that dementia is an issue we all need to deal with, whether we are going to have it or whether we're going to have somebody around us who has it, whether we have to put them into a facility or whether we have them at home, whether they're in, people who live in an area where they encounter people on a regular basis outside of their home or their facility. I mean, learning how to deal with somebody you meet in the street. I mean, I have met people in the street and I knew they weren't quite right.
Normalizing dementia would be helpful.
Thank you. That was the word I was looking for.
Definitely would be very helpful.
Yeah.
And just public education regarding dementia and knowing the difference between normal aging and not normal aging. Teepa Snow has a wonderful skit about that. That's very, very helpful.
Great.
And yes, just to remain positive, because dementia doesn't have to be a horrible experience. It can be, it's learning about working with what's left, not worrying about what the person is no longer able to do, but what they are able to do, and working with that, and making sure that they feel as though they're contributing. We all need to feel meaningful. We all need love. We need to feel like we're productive, like we're accomplishing something, like we're worth something. Yeah. And people with dementia are no different. Absolutely not.
So it's all about dignity.
Dignity and just feeling worthwhile.
Yeah. So even when people don't know where they are and how they are, they will still retain that innate sense of dignity and knowing that they're worth something.
Yeah.
If that's taken away, I could imagine that's why people get so angry when they have dementia.
Well, that's one of the reasons. Yes, absolutely. When you try and take over and do things for them, or make them do things they don't want to do.
Yeah.
And you know, the pain factor is a big one. They've done studies where they show that people with dementia get 1/3 less pain medication than people without dementia. Because people without dementia can say, "Oh, I've got a really bad headache. Oh, please give me something." Whereas people with dementia aren't capable, in some cases, to say, "I've got a really bad headache." And they can't even use the body language to describe it. And the carer, more often than not, will say, "You're feeling fine, aren't you?" So, of course, the person with dementia is going to mimic their head nod, and off the carer goes because they're feeling fine.
Again, enter the world of the person with
Yes.
dementia and find out where they're at. And again, body language, all of those things that you
That's
mentioned,
right.
being really careful about that. Sounds like there's a lot of work to do.
There is.
So
There
thank
is.
you for being at the forefront of all of this.
Well, I'm enjoying it tremendously. I find it's just incredibly rewarding, and I really hope I can make a difference.
You already are.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us. And yes.
It's been my pleasure. Anytime.
Thank you. Thank you, Lee.